All right, the claim that I'm refuting is that the consequences of drunk driving will deter individuals from doing it again. Now, before I get into his secondary claims, I'd like to point out his own personal story. And in this story, he gives an account on how he himself got DUIs on 2 separate occasions. And while one individual obviously isn't representative of America or even California, it is important to note that we do have a first-hand account of someone who the consequences of drunk driving did not deter them from doing it again. Now, his secondary claims were that there are many basic consequences to a DUI, that these consequences can hurt someone's future, and that the statistics show improvement. Now, the first 2 claims aren't really controversial, and so I'm not even going to really bother refuting that there are very basic consequences to a DUI and that these DUIs can hurt someone's future. However, and the statistics show improvement, that in 2008, over 25% of DUIs, over 25% of convicted DUI offenders were repeat offenders, which means of the 200,000 convictions, over 50,000 of them were repeat offenders. Additionally, he brought up a statistic that over the last 20 years, that the number of repeat offenders dropped by 44%, but additionally, there are 46% DUI arrests in total in the past 20 years. So that drop of reoffenders isn't that significant, as the entire number of DUIs is also dropped. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Well, obviously, the most damning argument is that the personal example here undermines the advocate's own claim. Look, if you got your hand slapped, that you're not going to do it again, and that's not what happened in the personal example that was being used to talk about this. So it appears that it is not sufficient, whatever the penalties are, to prevent it from happening again. I think that that's a pretty good, valid point for you to point out. The issue on the first and second points, arguing that there's no dispute on those particular issues. You ought to explain why the absence of a dispute means that it's unnecessary to respond to them a little bit. It doesn't add to or detract from the validity of the advocate's conclusion, or, for instance, that it fails to meet the standards of an argument. Which point of view is it that you're taking on that? I think you could use a little bit more explanation on that. Now, you respond to the third point by basically presenting a pretty straightforward statistic to begin with that says that a large percentage of the DUIs are in fact repeat offenders, which seems to suggest that it's not effective for a substantial number of them. I don't know, for instance, whether or not that is true of other crimes. For instance, is it substantially different? Maybe you could have done some comparison to see whether or not the DUI laws are they consistent with the penalties for other laws. If, for instance, it turns out that on other laws, let's say gun laws, for instance, that 50% of the people being convicted are reoffenders there, well, you could say that certainly is not deterring it, and then he would be able to come back and say, so the DUI laws are working twice as well as the gun laws are in this particular situation. We don't have any comparative data to go on. That might have been a way to develop that argument. The second statistic that you gave me was not quite very clear as to what inference that you were making on it. The other thing is, and I know that you kind of barely say that's all there is to say about it. Give it a context in here. Is there a dispute about whether or not DUI is a bad thing? No, nobody's disputing that. Is there a dispute about whether there are consequences to a DUI? No, nobody's disputing that. The question is there something else that we could be doing that would be more effective? that's where there might be some argument, and I think you could show, for instance, that we are taking all the activities that are possible, or that we're not taking all the activities that are possible. He seems to be saying there's nothing more that we could be doing, and I think the argument is that there are other things that we could be doing that might be effective. You know, I don't know what those other things would be. You know, death penalty for DUI or something like that. That's what